Earlier this evening, before going to the gym, I saw this tweet from Lennon McCarthy, or Lennon Trumpsky, as he's also called on Twitter. And he was basically making fun of Cenk Uygur, who is the founder and chief of TYT Politics. And he basically said, you predicted Hillary would win and you were wrong and you're wrong now. Same thing, still wrong. What did Uygur say? He said people are making the same mistake they did in the 2016 election, but in reverse. In 2016, Democratas, he misspells Democrats, and MSM were overly optimistic that Clinton was going to win, and now they are overly pessimistic that Democrats will not win. Wrong, numbers are real. GOP will be crushed in 2018. So let's go look here. I haven't looked at this yet, and there's people who are not even that big of a they're not Republican trolls. This person, Suzanne Murphy, says, where are the polls you refer to? Okay, and she's a progressive. I understand internal polling by the Democrats tells a different story. Do you have access to these polls to confirm? And is your position any blue will do? And then this person, who is a Ben Jealous supporter, says, I just really want it to be over and done with, so at least I'll know which way it's going to go. I'm still volunteering every weekend trying to get people to vote for Ben Jealous. The suspense is too much. I just want it to be over. I can tell this person right now that Ben Jealous is not going to win. He is basically, I think he's over 18 points down in the polls in Maryland. Then Austin Fletcher says he's going to bet him. That's the guy from Flecka's. And, there's just these people are basically trying to live in their own world where they think that the country is going to change in a couple weeks from being, from rejecting the calls of media figures to vote for Donald Trump, to vote for Donald Trump's opponents. So let me show you some of the issues that are really complicating the path to victory for the Democrats in the midterms, okay? I am not somebody who's going to write off the possibility of a Democratic victory, especially in the House. I really don't see it happening in the Senate. I think I'm not the only person who says so. I could be wrong, but I don't see any momentum carrying the Democrats to victory in the Senate. In fact, I would make the case at this moment, okay, don't hold me to it, but at this moment, the Democrats might not win any of the Republican seats in the Senate, and you could actually have a Republican avalanche that gains Mitch McConnell 5 or 6 seats in the Senate and basically renders the Democrats almost dependent on people like Joe Manchin and Bob Menendez, some of these ogres that are really dragging the party to the center and to the right even. And that would actually minimize that. That's really important. If you're a progressive out there and you're thinking that this is going to be a good year because of Democrats in the House, you have to remember that 2 of the Democrats that are very likely to win their seats back, even though they're not out of the woods yet, are Bob Menendez and Joe Manchin. So that's not good news for progressive Democrats. In any case, so some of the factors that have complicated the race have happened over the past few weeks and even this week. You have the issue of Elizabeth Warren and the DNA test. We've already covered that in a couple other videos. I don't think I'm going to spend time on that in this video because we'd kind of get distracted by it. Another factor that has cropped up is the hurricanes in the southeast. So those are going to make it difficult for voting to happen in some states like Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. Parts of those states are kind of problematic, and it's not known whether that will tip the race in one direction or the other. Matter of fact, in 2016 there was a hurricane in, I believe it was North Carolina, and Trump ended up winning that race for the president, but the governor's race flipped to a Democrat. I forgot that guy's name. But then there's also the whole Kanye West factor, the Kanye West and Taylor Swift factor. It is very odd, let me say, that a celebrity comes out and endorses basically Donald Trump's as a person more so than talking about voting. That was Kanye West. The media jumps on him, starts calling him mentally ill. And then Taylor Swift, who nobody has called mentally ill, she goes out and personally endorses two Democratic candidates, a House incumbent, I think his name is Jim Cooper, as well as the Democratic senatorial candidate Phil Bredesen. And it's basically gone all wrong for the Democrats because of that. Well, I would say this. Okay, and I haven't said to Taylor Swift. A lot of people tell her to shut up and sing. That's what they were telling the Dixie Chicks back in the 2000s when they came out against Bush. That's not really the type of message that I would I would go for. What I would really say is know your audience, and the people of Tennessee, I don't think are going to change their minds because of what Taylor Swift, who is a former country singer, is saying. Taylor Swift hasn't really been into the country genre since probably 2008, 2009. From what I know, I probably wasn't even listening to anything she was playing at the time. And I still, the only album I know of hers is 1989, and that's more because of the Ryan Adams cover version. So the people of Tennessee have largely rejected that type of appeal. And in a sense, that it's exactly the type of reaction that you have seen similar to the Dixie Chicks. People are just saying, well, with all due respect, we know exactly what our values are. You can't impose our values on us. So let's get into some other issues that have come up, not related to necessarily Elizabeth Warren or Kanye West and Taylor Swift. Those are kind of big story arcs that are essentially distractions, and they don't bode well for the Democrats anyway. But these are some other, like, more precise issues that are going to hurt them. This is from Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, and it exposes some of the issues with Claire McCaskill, how she has a public position on abortion and guns and a private position, also in terms of PAC money from Planned Parenthood bundlers and things like that.
So Senator Claire McCaskill responded to our videos last night on local TV KOLR 10 in Missouri, and we're going to break it down for you.
Now, from Ozarks First, you're watching Color 10 News at 6.
A new video tonight produced by Project Veritas, a self-described guerrilla journalism outlet led by James O'Keefe, is targeting Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill.
And tonight, she's answering the claims made by the group.
So in this videotape reaction, Claire McCaskill makes all types of wild claims, attacks Project Veritas action, attacks her opponent, characterizes our work. It's pretty amazing to watch. Let's play this first line.
Well, it is startling that Josh Hawley would be part of fraudulently embedding somebody in my campaign.
Let me categorically and unequivocally deny that Hawley has anything to do with this. I've never met him. He doesn't work for me. We don't talk to any candidates at Project Veritas Action. We only investigate candidates. This is an absolutely false statement, period. And it's outrageous that she would make a factually untrue statement like this with no evidence on television and just say it. It's absolutely false. Not only have I said it's false, last night on Hannity's TV program, Hawley made a statement that it was false.
So too tonight is Josh Hawley's campaign, and his campaign called this absurd.
Let's take a look at the next line in Claire McCaskill's response on local TV.
He's the Attorney General of the state of Missouri. He's supposed to be going after fraud, not participating in it.
Senator McCaskill, what about the videotapes that we've shown is fraud? So the first lie was that this opponent was somehow working with us, and now you're going to say that it's fraud. What the people are on tape saying is the direct opposite of what you and your staff has stated publicly. What is that if not fraud? Is the video recording a problem? more of a problem than what the people are actually saying in the tapes? What is lying to the voters? What is that called? What is lying to moderate voters in order to apparently win an election? Is uncovering that story a bigger problem than the story itself? Please elaborate for us on what exactly you mean when you call our undercover investigative journalism fraud, a technique that has been used for 100 years. It just so happens to be used to expose you in this case.
So there was nothing there. I've been very upfront about all my positions.
Actually, the entire investigation was about how your staff and you say things differently in private than you say in public. When you say there's nothing there, does that mean Nick Starost's comment about, quote, people just can't know that, unquote, about Obama and your views?
There's thoughts that Obama would do more harm here than he would do good.
And they essentially have the same views on everything.
Yeah.
You know,
people just can't know that.
When you say there's nothing there, are you referring to when Nick...
So that's kind of a rehash of some of the other videos are a little more in depth about that. Now, I'll say something. I don't think that O'Keefe's videos were exactly shocking. It's pretty. If you don't know about Claire McCaskill, she's there's certain things I think that put her in the corner of being a complete and total Obama puppet. She was a huge Affordable Care Act supporter, Obamacare. She is a pro Planned Parenthood person. She's also an anti-Second Amendment person. The fact that she would try to appeal to the center right now, I think is, of course, it's the only strategy she can do, but it just isn't true. Everything about Claire McCaskill's career validates the things that her staffers are caught on camera saying. And you can go look at those videos and hear some more of that. And the other issue that I'm seeing here is that she's openly accusing her opponent of employing or participating in a hoax by James O'Keefe. The issue here is that she cannot go and try to tie a hostile media outlet to her opponent and then claim to be a credible candidate without then acknowledging that in many cases there are candidates that are openly promoted by much larger media outlets than Project Veritas. And they just get the kid gloves all the time. There are candidates that have for years have enjoyed basically blanket coverage in a positive direction. Again, I'll bring this up briefly. Elizabeth Warren, the Boston Globe has run stories of her. This is, I'll just show this one, Elizabeth Warren. So, there's one where she adopts a puppy. I misspelled puppy, but, there's, see, this is not newsworthy. Why is The Hill publishing a story about Elizabeth Warren adopting a puppy? Okay, they probably wouldn't run that type of story about Mitch McConnell, and they shouldn't, because I don't give a shit, and it doesn't matter. Okay, so the other issue that I've been seeing is that while Democrats complain about an operative being pushed into their campaign and exposing, certain views of Claire McCaskill's, which, to be honest with you, I don't find very surprising. I think O'Keefe's videos on the unions are much more, his videos on the unions were very shocking to me, like the way that they cover up actual criminal abuse. What happened today, though, is much more of an issue than James O'Keefe putting moles into people's campaigns. It says here, a Democratic operative was fired after an arrest over alleged altercation with Laxalt campaign manager. Those of you who don't know, there's Nevada Attorney General Adam Laxalt is running for governor, and a Democratic activist employed by American Bridge, the party's outside group research arm, and this is according to Politico, was fired on Wednesday after being arrested and charged with battery in Las Vegas the previous night following an alleged altercation with the manager of Nevada Attorney General Adam Laxalt's gubernatorial campaign. Kristen Davison, Laxalt's campaign manager, told police that Mike Stark, the activist, hurt her as he tried to question Laxalt in an event at the East Las Vegas Community Center. In a statement to police that was provided to Politico by Laxalt's campaign, Davison said, Stark physically pushed his body on me multiple times. I asked him to stop and to back away, and he did not. So this is a real-time example of a campaign activist, political activist, physically accosting and essentially assaulting a campaign worker. And, this is not national news I don't know if it is yet. It might become news by tomorrow, but who knows? Because the only reason I heard about this was because somebody had shared it with me. American Bridge said in a statement on Wednesday that Stark had been fired. Last night, one of our employees was involved in an incident with a member of Adam Laxalt's campaign in Nevada, the American Bridge statement said. In response to the incident, we have decided to relieve this employee of his duties with American Bridge effective immediately. After the initial confrontation, Laxalt and his staff retreated to a conference room, Davison said in the report, at which point Stark pushed the door wide open, trapping myself and staff in the doorway. At that point, he continued to yell and hold a camera in my face, Davison continued. I could not move. Stark grabbed my arm, twisted it behind my back, squeezed it very hard, and every time I tried to pull away, he pulled me closer and gripped my arm tighter. Davison wrote that she started screaming for help and Stark was hurting her. That Stark was hurting her. Multiple colleagues tried to pull Stark off, according to the police report, and then someone called the police. Stark has a history of altercations in pursuit of Republican officials. In September, Stark was acquitted on charges that he assaulted an advisor to Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke while filming Zinke for American Bridge and asking questions in a House office building. Stark was released from custody after posting bail of $1,140, according to local police. And it says he was arrested by our city marshals last night about 7 p.m. after Kristen Davison contacted them, saying Stark had grabbed her by the arm and pushed her. The arrest is classified as a citizen's arrest because the incident did not happen in the presence of the marshals. Jay Saradke, the spokesperson for the marshals, said in an email to Politico on Wednesday, the incident took place as an apparent result of an altercation involving Mr. Stark entering one of the rooms at the East Las Vegas Community Center with a camera and attempting to question Attorney General Adam Laxalt. Former Governor Bob List, a Laxalt supporter, wrote in a statement to the police that he was worried for the safety of Laxalt and Davison. There were 5 of us trying. This is crazy. A former governor was involved in this. There were 5 of us trying to block him. He grabbed Kristen Davison's arm and twisted it behind her, pinned her against the door jamb as we tried to free her, List wrote, adding that he was concerned for the safety of the Attorney General and of Kristen. Laxalt's campaign described the episode as Stark assaulting a female campaign manager. Then it says in 2017, Fairfax County Police in Virginia opened an internal investigation over video of an arrest of Stark, then working for the liberal news outlet Share Blue Media, who was trying to ask then gubernatorial candidate Ed Gillespie a question in the middle of a community parade. Stark was found guilty of disorderly conduct, according to a report in the Washington Post. In 2006, Stark was ejected from an event in Charlottesville featuring Republican Senator George Allen after Stark tried to ask the then senator a derogatory question, according to the Virginia Pilot. So and by the way, George Allen, I think, lost that election, probably deservedly. He wasn't a very good candidate. This is a case of somebody who is unhinged. I found another article about this earlier. But in any case, there's another race that I think people are really talking about a lot, and that's the Beto O'Rourke race. Beto O'Rourke versus Ted Cruz in Texas. And this is an article that I was very impressed with. It's from Vanity Fair, and so it's rare for me to say that. But Tina Nguyen said that Beto O'Rourke, a Democratic dreamboat, is getting his ass kicked in Texas. And she goes on to talk about how he's making a lot of money, raising tons of money and getting a lot of coverage, and he's getting support from Andy Cohen of Bravo Network and Judd Apatow and everything. So I want people to understand why I think Tina Nguyen is saying that he's getting his ass kicked. So she says the obstacles O'Rourke must overcome in order to win Texas have prompted several pundits to wonder whether Betomania, as Politico's Jake Schaefer puts it, is simply the product of a democratic yearning for a handsome young man to win a red state. Not since the press corps fell in love with Barack Obama in the 2008 presidential campaign has such a sirocco of worshipable candidate profiles and commentaries appeared in the national press, he wrote, suggesting that O'Rourke is lauded and cuddled by reporters for the simple reason that he's not Ted Cruz, the Skeletor of American politics. That is a very good way of putting it, both from Jack Schaefer, the person who wrote it, and Tina Nguyen, who's quoting it. And I'll explain why. There's an issue when you're trying to win in a red state where you still have to, I suppose, pander to the voters, and that's exactly what Claire McCaskill is trying to do, and that's something that Beto O'Rourke I don't think is succeeding at all. And the fact is, if you're a Republican wanting to win in a blue state or a Democrat wanting to win in a red state, you cannot behave like the polar extreme of either party. Okay, in Massachusetts, for example, there's a Republican governor who's doing very well, Charlie Baker, who's blowing out his Democratic opposition. He's earning like 65% of the vote in most polls. So that type of success is earned not through really standing up for the party's principles, but for kind of, I guess, playing to the audience of Massachusetts, which is something I wouldn't support. Of course, I wouldn't. That's one of the reasons I don't think I'd be good at politics, because you have a lot of these people who basically pander and essentially sell their souls in order to win races. So in Beto O'Rourke's case, you have somebody who's basically virtue signaling on a constant basis that he's a different type of senator and everything, and he's going to bring, I guess, a more compassionate, progressive message to Washington, D.C. And the person that he reminds me the most of is this guy, Jon Ossoff. So this guy, it says here that I didn't even know this was going to happen, but Roll Call, which is a conservative blog, they're saying that Beto O'Rourke is the next Jon Ossoff. So you guys probably don't remember, unless you really were following politics a lot last year, but Jon Ossoff was this very photogenic candidate who was trying to win a House race. It was basically a special election to take Tom Price's House seat in Georgia last year, in I think it was in June 2017, and the Democrats poured a ton of money into it. It says here, a staffer there told me that even $100,000 of Ossoff's $30 million could have won the race for them. Instead, they lost both, and that's why they were talking a little more about a South Carolina congressional district that the Democrats didn't invest anything in. So they invested $30 million in a race in Georgia. In this race in Texas, I believe that they've raised over $38 million. Okay, for one race in Texas to dethrone Ted Cruz, and they're probably not going to do it. He's actually trailing in the polls by about 7%, and it even says it here that the average is 7%. And the New York Times says 8%. The New York Times, which is not favorable to Republicans in most of their polls. Quinnipiac, which is often very slanted against Republicans, has Ted Cruz winning by 9 points. Okay, so being realistic, Beto O'Rourke, who I watched the debate between him and Cruz yesterday, is not really on an arc to succeed there. In fact, you could say that, barring some sort of huge drop in enthusiasm among Republicans in Texas, I wouldn't say he has any chance of winning. Ted Cruz did get a lot of votes in the primaries this year, when he wasn't even running against anybody. And then there's another issue here where there was, during the debate, they slung a lot of accusations against each other. You can see O'Rourke and Cruz. O'Rourke definitely looks more, more physically fit and more impressive, but they were throwing accusations against each other that don't resonate with any swing voters. The Cambridge Analytica scandal, which was not really a scandal in my opinion, people knew. Facebook admitted that they sold data to Cambridge Analytica. There was nothing illegal about Ted Cruz. So look, I know a lot of people don't like Cambridge Analytica, especially if you're a progressive. It's not a scandal. It's basically something that is, it's just a signal to one camp that, oh, Ted Cruz collaborated with Cambridge Analytica. Well, all the people who care about that already have decided to vote against Ted Cruz if they live in Texas. This isn't a swing vote earning message. Did O'Rourke vote to support late-term abortions? It says O'Rourke is a longtime supporter of abortion rights. In October 2017, when the U.S. House voted 237 to 189 to pass Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, a measure that effectively banned abortions after 20 weeks, O'Rourke was one of the mostly Democratic no votes. So 20 weeks, if you think about it, is over 5 months. That is pretty late. It isn't. I think a late term abortion is the third trimester, but that's already getting into the third trimester. The measure later died in the Senate. And yes, I think for what Ted Cruz is doing is he is riling up his base. So you could say he's doing the exact same thing that O'Rourke is doing. He's saying to the people that are listening out there, the conservative people out in out in Texas, they're saying, well, look exactly what this guy is supporting. You can't afford to stay home. So with Cruz, he's basically mining from a much larger reserve of voters than O'Rourke is. It says, did O'Rourke vote for a $10 per barrel tax on every barrel of oil in Texas? It says here, this claim goes back to the days of President Barack Obama, who proposed a $10 tax on every barrel of oil paid for by energy companies to fund rail and highway projects. When House Republicans in 2016 introduced a resolution opposing the proposal, O'Rourke voted against it. O'Rourke has since defended his vote, saying that he wants to find more ways to fund national infrastructure projects. So, look, I think that they spin it a different way, but essentially the charge sticks. And for people who are, they live in Texas and they might be they might work in the energy industry, of course they wouldn't like that, okay? I'm not talking about what's right or wrong. I'm talking about what resonates with voters. Did O'Rourke vote against the Hurricane Harvey bill? While it's true the congressman was a no vote on the bill, O'Rourke has long insisted there's more to the story. The bill, which was later signed into law, allowed Harvey victims to receive tax deductions on personal losses in the storm and reduced penalties for withdrawing funds from retirement accounts to cover storm-related costs. But the bill touched on more than just Harvey relief. It also included a line that allowed for the reauthorization of the FAA and other small health care programs. O'Rourke said that he voted against the insurance since it didn't include funding reauthorization for the Children's Health Insurance Program and community health centers, which were both set to expire within days of the vote. So I think that's a good explanation for O'Rourke if from his camp. Then you have claims about PAC support. So essentially, these are people who they spent an entire hour hurling charges against each other, which are true, but don't really affect the minds of people who are on either side of the aisle. Who, you're not dragging an O'Rourke voter back from the brink into the Cruz camp by accusing him of, voting to tax $10 per barrel. Okay, there was one issue where Cruz accused Beto O'Rourke of accepting money from J Street. J Street happens to be a very far left progressive PAC that is concerned with Israel and Palestine, and they're very against the government of Netanyahu in Israel. And they apparently bundled $187,000 in donations for O'Rourke. So for some Texans, this, I would say probably less than 1% of Texans, that would be a huge issue that would cause them to vote for Cruz, because they don't like, people that support PACs that would be hostile to Israel. I don't think that the majority of voters really care about that. I think for Cruz, that kind of is just reinforcing the base again. And then there's another PAC that is called the Fire Ted Cruz PAC that has raised $278,000, and it's affiliated with Austin filmmaker Richard Linklater, by the way, who is a great filmmaker. If you haven't seen Slacker, amazing movie, but who's a hard left liberal. So really, what does this really mean? Ted Cruz is making the case that O'Rourke, in essence, is not much different from the typical politician. He talks a lot about how he's going to get money out of politics, but he can't do that because people are, PACs are free to raise money for whoever they want. So while what's his name? While Beto O'Rourke can talk a lot about, rejecting super PACs and everything, those super PACs can still raise money for him. They can still, they just don't have, they can't coordinate with him. So essentially, it's an empty promise, just like everything that Cenk Uygur was talking about. The progressive camp has really changed almost like glacially since 2016. They're very divided. There's the core Bernie Sanders people that I think are still with the Democrats. Then there's the people who have drifted further and further to the left, and they've rejected the Democrats. There are some people who have crossed over to the Republicans, and then there's also a significant amount of people who have become completely disillusioned and aren't going to vote at all. And I've talked to some of those people. So Cenk Uygur, I think, is really delusional. He doesn't know exactly what's been going on. He hasn't noticed real changes within his own group of people. The changes aren't ones of substance. They're changes in enthusiasm. And unfortunately for progressives going forward, I think that this race, whether the Democrats take the House or not, is not going to bode well for progressives. Their influence will actually decrease in the Senate. Their influence in the House really won't change much, because ultimately a lot of their people are really junior members that can't affect much and are dependent on the Democratic Party as a whole to give them any influence. So they'll basically end up assimilating into the rest of the party like the Borg and becoming just like all the other NPC Democrats. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Also, subscribe to my other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds. We're having a live stream tonight at 10:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 Pacific. Also, comment on this video when it uploads and follow me on all the other platforms. And I'll see you later.